Okay, so knowing your numbers. This is a genius, eye-opening, and essential topic, disguised as a scary and potentially boring one. But it's really important because it helps you to test and measure on any new initiatives that you implement. So you can work out what is actually working in your business and make changes to get better results. And in business, you need to have enough information to help you to make the right decisions. And that's what this is all about. And especially as you implement the small continual tweaks that we recommend you implement throughout the success method, it can sometimes be hard to know what's actually working best. So if you know your numbers, if you're tracking the key KPIs, then you can have the feedback from the changes you make so that you can assess what's working and choose the best course of action for your business. So today we're going to look at profit margins, break even. We're going to look at reporting and the concept of testing and measuring. Now, I reckon at least 80% of you listening to this are feeling a little sick. That's okay. Actually, it's not as bad as you think it's going to be. And the last time I ran this session live, it was an absolute game changer and eye opener for most of my clients. And some big changes were made off the back of it, which significantly increased their profit. Anyone here for that? Hell yes. Okay, so let's look at profit first. What is profit? Well, in business, profit is king. So once you know your numbers, you'll know how many new clients you need to take on or how many products you need to sell to firstly break even and then to hit your monthly profit goals. So you can make a plan and work towards it. And it's impossible to directly get more profit, but remembering the formula, if we keep making tweaks to other variables within the business, we can significantly influence profitability. So what we can influence is increasing the number of leads coming into the business and increasing the number of conversions to get more customers. We can also increase the maximize customer value by increasing the average value of each sale, the frequency of sale, and all of that multiplies together to increase the profit that you're making in your business. So we don't actually look at margins in the formula, but profit is definitely influenced by margins. So if you do improve your margins, then your profit is always going to increase. And activities that will most impact your margins include pricing, hence why this topic is important. And we're also going to look at it later on as well. Upselling is an amazing strategy to increase margins. Discounting is in there, and controlling expenditure. Other items like stock management and time management make a big impact too. So, budgeting for profit. So I'd love you to think about how much profit would you like to be making each month? And we calculate profit by subtracting our expenses from our income. So profit is income minus expenses, usually calculated on a monthly or on an annual basis. So to calculate the profit on your average service, I have shared a spreadsheet to calculate the annual expenses. So highly recommend that you split your expenses out across all of your sales, and don't forget to budget for tax as an expense in your business as well. Now, I should just clarify, what we're doing here is not what your accountant would have you do. But what I want you to be able to do is come away from this understanding your numbers for yourself. So if you look at your annual expenses and divide them by 12, you'll get your monthly expenses. So say your monthly expenses are, I don't know, £500 on average, or maybe it's £1,000. It really depends on your business. I would split that out across your product sales or your services for that month. If you're selling a physical product, be sure to take into account the cost of the item separately. And basically what we're looking at here is how much does it cost you on each of your sales. So it's harder to calculate when you're service-based, and it's worth calculating your weekly or daily costs. So for some of you, you might just want to look at your tax return, see what that number is, and divide by 52. Although who really works 52 weeks a year? So if you're service-based and you know that you take 5 weeks holiday a year, maybe it's dividing it by 47. Whatever's right for you. And then you know what you need to make each day or each week just to break even, so you can set profit goals. So the idea is we're looking at what are your expenses per day that you're in business, or if you're selling products, what are your expenses per month, and then you can work out per item that you're selling what are your expenses. It's going to look slightly different for everyone, but work out for you what is the most useful thing to understand. And for me, actually, early on in my business, I had 2 young children in childcare. OMG. Now, I should point out, childcare costs are not a business expense for tax purposes. But for me, I had to take it into consideration to understand where my own break even was and to set my own profit goals. So it was a bit messy, but it was useful. And at the time, I only worked 3 days a week as well. So when I was calculating my daily expenses and my break even, I took all of this into account. So as I said, it's going to look a bit different for each of you. And if you need any help, you can come on our monthly Q&A to get the one-to-one help that you need there. So first step for each of you, calculate your expenses. Hit pause and work out over the year, what are all of the expenses in your business? You might need to look back at your bank statements. You might just want to grab the number from your tax return, however best, although not everything is a viable expense in your tax return. So if it were me, I'd be looking at bank statements. So pause and calculate your expenses. And now consider how best to allocate them across your products or services. So for me, as a coach who, I have some days where I literally am making like more than £1,000 in a day. And I have some days where I'm not client facing, so I don't technically earn anything. So I decided to break it down as my expenses per working day. Others of you will want to look to, okay, on average, I sell this many products per month. If it's quite consistent, what is that number? So I also broke it down and looked at, on average, how many times was I coaching on your average month? And back then it was much simpler. I just did one-to-one coaching. It's much more complicated now, hence why the daily rate's really useful for me. But I could work out, say I was coaching, oh gosh, I don't know, 12 times over the month. Then I could work out for each of those sessions what my expenses were, and then what my profit was on top of that per coaching session. So pause and work out how best to allocate, and then what is your actual profit. So either, on your typical day, maybe it's per, if you're like me, per coaching session, maybe it's on your typical product that you're selling. And are you surprised by this? So many of my clients, when they have done this exercise on my Success Club, when I did this live previously, they were absolutely flipping shocked by this number. And it's okay. This is a useful exercise to help you work on your pricing, to help you work out what do you want to be earning and where do you need to get to. So I'd love you to now think, how much would you like to be earning each month, week, or day? However, whatever is the most useful calculation for you. And then, bearing in mind your expenses, how many sales do you need to make each month, week, or day, taking into account your expenses? So honestly, take a pause, work it out. But so interesting to see this broken down. And honestly, people on this, the numbers are going to vary wildly. So it's really useful to understand our margins. And I think now many of you are going to be looking at your pricing in a different light. So I just want to run through some terminology that you might hear and what we call KPIs, key performance indicators, that you may wish to measure if you sell physical products. So these KPIs, key performance indicators, are just numbers that you can track so you can see how you're doing. So profit margins. So this is taking your profit as a percentage of your sale price. So the calculation for this, and it's a percentage, so your profit margin as a percentage is the profit divided by the sale price times 100. Some people will want to be tracking that number, and the higher that number, the better. Some people will want to be tracking the markup. So this is the profit as a percentage of your cost price. And it's a similar calculation. So the markup, again in a percentage, is the profit divided by the cost price times by 100. I wouldn't necessarily track both of those. I don't even track either, to be honest, because I don't sell physical products, or not many. I guess this is technically a physical product, so maybe I do. But I have not been tracking. You've got to work out what are the numbers that are most useful for you. So for those selling physical products especially, or products that you are not required, it's not a service, it's a product, take a moment to calculate these, because this can be especially eye-opening. So have a think. Is this a useful KPI for you to track? If so, great. Set yourself up a little table so you can track it. If not, no worries. So pause if you need any time to implement any of that, to work anything out. So how do we increase our margins and make more profit? Who's here for that? Hell yes. So what we want to think about are, what actually are your margins on your main product or services, and what small changes could you make that will increase your profit or your profit margins? And honestly, this will look a bit different in any business, but there's lots of simple ways that we can increase profit. And this is just in terms of profit margins. So honestly, the easiest thing to do to increase your profit is to put your prices up by 5%, 10%. Honestly, most of your clients are unlikely to notice that, much of a difference. And the extra that you're making will be pure profit. Obviously, if your prices are exorbitantly high, it might not be the right strategy, but it's always a good one to test. And then stop offering unnecessary discounts. Give me a wave, not that I can see it, but give me a wave. If you always offer a discount, people haven't even asked for them, but you just offer it. Stop. Now, I'm not saying never have discounts, but use them strategically from time to time. And there is a topic specifically on this called, it's like insane offers. I can't remember, that's not the name. It's like that. But doing it from time to time, doing it all the time when it's not needed actually devalues your product or your service. Then let's look at reducing expenses in your business. So many things you can do. For example, if there's a particular item that you buy a lot of, it might be that you can buy in bulk and get a discount. For those of you with physical offices, it actually might be that you can reduce your utility bills by shopping around and offset a significant cost in your business. Have a look as well through any old subscriptions or just subscriptions that you've got running in your business and check that you actually need and use these. So lots of people have subscriptions to old email addresses. Some people are still paying for old websites that they're no longer using. So just do a bit of an audit of your expenses. It might be something you do now. It might be something you can make a note to go away and do in the future. So have a think as well about the items that you stock if you are selling products and calculate the margins on these items. So either the profit, like how much profit are you making as a percentage of that? Some will be higher than others, and it might be that if you calculate on all of your stock, that some items really aren't making you much money. You want to be a bit clever with this, because if there's an item that it doesn't make you loads, but it brings people into your store, you want to keep it. Or if it doesn't make you loads, but you sell it more than anything else, again, you want to keep it. But it's interesting to see the numbers and use these to base your decisions off. Upselling and cross-selling. Great topics. There's a whole separate topic just around these, and highly recommend spending some time on this. But they can very quickly and very easily make you more profit in your business. So a trick that we see in supermarkets and places like IKEA, if you have a physical store, give your customers a big shopping bag. So a classic example of this is Primark. Has anyone been into Primark and you go in and you grab, like, I can fit my children in that shopping basket. Like, one of them's 6 now. She needs to crouch down a bit, but they're huge. And how often do we go around and literally just keep chucking stuff in? So much more than you could carry in your arms. And blimey, has anyone ever been to Primark and not spent a fortune? I don't really go that often. It's not really my store, but every time I've gone, blimey. And IKEA, get those massive yellow bags that you go around the store with, and you just keep chucking stuff in and then realize that you can barely get it to the car. It's a great tactic to help people buy more. And then how about online stores? So anyone else a sucker for adding items in to get free delivery on orders over a certain price point? 100% every single time. It's a very good tactic to encourage people to order more. And then let's think about decreasing waste as a way of increasing profit. So stock management, being on top of the stock that you've got sitting around in your store. If you are a services business, it might be that streamlining your processes can free up significant time for you to take on more paid work. For those of you who are running services business, maybe pause and consider what this might look like in your business. And just generally consider all of your outgoings in your business. Can you find them for cheaper? And the key thing we want to be thinking about is that small changes compound together to significantly increase your profitability. That's the whole point of this entire Success Method course. And it's the same. So what small changes could you make from this topic that will increase the profitability in your business? Hit pause and make a list of 5 or 6. Okay. What else? What else could you do from that list that we've looked at just there? And look in your workbooks as well, because it's all listed out. What else could you implement or could you change or look at that could significantly increase your profitability? Or even what 3 or 4 things could you do that would increase your profitability by 1 to 5%? We're not looking for massive changes, but these compound together over time with everything else that we're doing to make a big impact. Have a think as well, like what would be the easiest thing to implement out of everything we've just covered? And then what one thing would make the biggest impact on your profit? And my challenge for each of you is to choose 1, 2, or 3 things from this list to implement in the next 3 to 4 days. So choose what's it going to be and schedule the time in your diary to make it happen. Okay, on to break even. So how many sales do you need to make each day, week, or month to break even? And this is just looking at your profit in a slightly different way. And all that you want to be looking at is the expenses for the period. So I personally do this over a month. Some people will do it over a week, over a day, whatever. So the expenses for the period. So that's, if you're doing it by month, it is your annual expenses, everything together, divided by 12. If you're doing it by week, it's the same divided by, I don't know, 52 or 47 if you don't work on your holidays. So expenses for the period divided by the average sale. This will tell you the number of sales needed to break even. So for me, I do my break even as just per month. Like, what do I need to make per month to break even? I've also broken it down per day before. And just these numbers are powerful to know. And actually, back when I was including my childcare costs in my break even, it was a painful calculation. I was early on in my business, and I wasn't making a huge amount of money because honestly, I wasn't working very much. I wasn't even working full days at the time, and I'm working 3 days a week. So it was a painful calculation, but super, super useful to know. And it made it really easy to say no to things that weren't profitable. So when people reached out and asked me to do things, if it wasn't beneficial to me and my business, it helped me to say no. And that in itself is valuable. So take a moment and calculate your break even in whatever way works best for your business, is the most useful for you to know. So pause, calculate. And then, how does that number feel? Are you surprised by it? I know I certainly was. And how does it feel to know that that is the number you need to be making, just not to make a profit, but just to break even in your business? Interesting. So, last part of this topic is looking at reporting. So, if you're going to make any changes in your business, you need to know where you're at before you start, or you won't be able to measure if the changes that you're making is working. So, For example, let's say you are aiming for £1,000 a month increase in profit in your business. Some of you will be like, "Oh, will I even get there?" Some of you will be like, easy peasy. For some of you, that'll be a 10K increase in profit each month. Awesome. Wherever you're at, there's no shame. Everyone's in different places here. Everyone is on their journey, pushing forwards and with massive potential, wherever you started from. So the whole point of that is, if you don't know where you're at, you're not going to know if you have done it. So knowing your numbers and your KPIs, your key performance indicators, it helps you to track progress, to know if what you're doing is working, and to make better decisions. So I'd love you in a second to take a pause and just note down, what numbers are you currently tracking? There'll be space for this in the workbook. And some of you are sitting there thinking, I am tracking absolutely flipping nothing. No worries, no need to pause. Some of you have an accounting background or an economics background and you're tracking a lot. That is awesome. So myself, what do I personally track? The main things I track is my profit and my expenses each month. There's lots more things that I could be tracking, but for now that seems to work. Those are my best indicators. For some of my clients, so some of my clients like run in-person stores and cafes, it's useful for them to track the average value of the sale. Now, this isn't as complicated as you think, but basically each day, each sale, they just noted down the value on a piece of paper. And at the end of the day, they divided that total number by the number of customers. And it can be useful to track daily, weekly, or monthly and just see if there's any trends. And this gives you a benchmark if you're testing out new strategies. So for them, they ran loads of different little promos. So there might have been a special offer if you were to buy cake alongside your coffee, or, oh my goodness, I can't even remember what some of the things were. Testing out a loyalty card to see if it increased the number of coffees bought from them in a week. Lots of different things that they were testing out, but they couldn't test any of that if they didn't know where they were starting from. Margins is also an interesting one to track. So they actually, after this session, they discontinued some of the products that they were stocking because the margins weren't high enough, and they weren't products that specifically brought people into the store. So highly recommend, if you are selling lots of different products or services, work out the margin on each of them. Work out the expenses. So yeah, work at what your expenses are, minus the sale price, minus the, I don't think this makes any sense. Guys, I am confusing myself with my here. But yeah, the margin is the profit divided by the cost of sale times 100. So yeah, look back earlier and work out your margins. And I have to say, for each of you who's like, why is she not great at this? Numbers are my worst thing in my own business. So if I can help you to get your head around this, even from a place where I struggle with, that's great. And all of these things, they're liberating to know. And it makes it easier to say no when you know what an hour of your time costs you, or that each day you've got to make a certain amount of money just to break even. So all of this is to help you to make better decisions. Testing and measuring. So measuring your KPIs and being able to predict future profits are important in business. It's important to be tracking your progress, And if you don't know your numbers, you don't know how you're going to get on. So anytime you start a new initiative, I want you to be asking yourself what the KPIs are. What are the numbers, the key performance indicators that are going to help you to track and measure if it's working or if it's not working? So for some of you, it might literally be the number of people who are buying a certain thing. For some of you, it might be the number of times the phone rings after a certain advert goes out. And for some of you, it will be the increase in profit margins, or sometimes it's just simply increase in profit over a month. It's often not that simple, but think about what is relevant to measure and then just set up a simple form to track it. The simpler, the better. And then tracking leads. So it's super useful to know where all your business is coming from, but this may not always be self-evident or from the source that you're expecting. And so, for example, my domiciliary care client, every time a new client gets in touch, he asks how they heard of him. It's super annoying to do, but he has so many different lead magnets, ways that leads come into him, that he needs to know, he needs that feedback from the individual to know what's working best and where to be investing his time and finances to grow the business. So if you really want to track well, you should only implement one initiative at a time so you can track it. Honestly, I never really stick to this. I often implement a couple of things at a time. So you can't always tell exactly where the progress comes from, but generally you'll have an idea. Yeah, it's probably not the best advice there. If you really want to know exactly, do things one at a time. If you want to get results quickly, do a few things at the same time. But work out how do you best track them. And when you're looking at increasing profit, using different margin-focused strategies, just keep trying different things until you see what works. And it might be that you implement several different strategies and the compound effects of little things that have a 1% impact over time is huge. But the best advice I can give you, if something is obviously not working, stop using it. No matter how much you like the idea or how much effort you put into it, try it once, maybe try it again, maybe make some changes and try it again, but if it's not working, drop it. Awesome. So hopefully this imperfectly perfect session is useful. Highly recommend getting your head around your numbers, working out what do you need to know, what do you need to be tracking, and also, you know, if your prices are high enough, because if you're not making much after your costs, then yeah, you possibly need to be taking action on that.